Welcome back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. I'm Nick Ravelis, your host. My guest today is the conductor of our upcoming performance of Florencia en el Amazonas, Joseph Mechavich. Welcome.
Hello, it's great. Great to be back.
Good for you to be back. Yeah. I mean, you've, Great Scott.
Uh-huh.
Moby Dick.
Nixon in China.
And Nixon in China.
Uh-huh.
It's a whole different ball game now.
It is.
I think, isn't it?
A stress-free ball game.
Well, let's talk about that. I really want to hear about the music, and I think just share with our audience a little bit what the style of this music is like, because it's not what we think of when our audiences particularly typically think of, okay, this was an opera that premiered in, 1996. So it's cutting edge, it's jagged, it's dissonant. What's going on in this score?
I think it's important always to look at the music and opera in general, pieces that are being written today or in the latter part of the last century. Our composers, are they creating the sonic world that supports the story?
Right.
That's the first thing you've got to understand when you are looking at a new piece. Is the composer creating that world, that sonic world that is going to support the drama on stage? Now, sure enough, the composer Daniel Catan has given us just that. When we talk about where this takes place, we're on the Amazon. So
on a riverboat.
On a riverboat. So you have, if you can imagine in your head, everything associated with being in the jungle, everything associated with being on the water is in the score. Now, that being said, the music itself is, to use this overly used word, accessible, is incredibly accessible, because he's creating this voluptuous environment of the jungle, this voluptuous environment of the boat, of the water, of the Amazon itself. So you are going to hear, I hate to use compare to other composers because it is Daniel Catan, but you hear some Debussy in there, you hear some Puccini. It's written in a very the sonic world is established that we all can understand what's going on.
I'd love to hear you use the phrase sonic world. I use the phrase sonic environment.
Fine.
Right. All the time in talking about operas by any composer.
Yep.
That you've got to put the audience there.
Yep.
Where it takes place, when it takes place sometimes, what time of day, what we're wearing.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything has to be there for it to be a convincing theater piece. And I think you're absolutely right about this piece. The world of the Amazon really is in there. How does he do that? How does he get those colors?
I think, he's a brilliant orchestrator, number one. That's assigning what instruments are going to play what notes. So the wind writing is incredibly florid. There are a lot of moving notes. Obviously, that is the breeze, that's the water, that's the birds. Everything are in the wind writing. And then there's a voluptuous, rich sound that coming from the strings as well that support the earthiness of this piece.
Yeah.
He also adds some in the percussion section, some sounds that are reminiscent of the continent of South Africa.
So you're not very, very far from the fact that this is Latin.
No,
that this is a Southern Hemisphere story.
It is,
and you get some of those rhythms. They're usually very subtle to my ear.
Yeah.
They don't, you're not overwhelmed with it.
No, not at all.
It's not a tango opera like Piazzolla or anything like that.
Not at all.
But the rhythm is not very far away, is it?
Right. It's interesting because this idea of magical realism, which is something to discover through this piece, the true magical realism, that element is actually in the orchestra. The orchestra provides that aspect of the piece, I feel, in the magic and everything, the transformation qualities, the transformative qualities of the piece come out of the orchestra, come out of its orchestration.
That's interesting to hear you say that. I've never thought of it that way. I keep looking in the story and in the production elements for magical realism.
Yeah.
But to think of it as coming out of the
music is inspiring those moments, those active moments of the water, the active moments of the animals, the jungle animals, the active moments of the transformation of the characters. It comes out of the textures of the orchestra. Out of Catan is able to, like all great theater composers, capture the dramatic pulse.
Yeah. There's a moment that I absolutely love. I think it's the opening of the second scene when the riverboat has actually taken off or is
Yeah,
taking off.
yeah.
You hear the steam whistle and
Yep.
off it goes.
Off it goes.
And you know, I can close my eyes and see the glimmering of the sun on the river. I can hear the birds. I can see them flying. You know, it's really remarkably specific
Yep.
writing.
Absolutely. I mean, we think of that even going backwards. The intermezzo between Acts 2 and 3, the interlude in Madame Butterfly. That tells this. The music tells the story. Even if you didn't have the characters on stage, you still know what's going on.
Yeah.
You can hear, you know, it turning into dawn. I mean,
Right.
that's the magic of the composer. You can, in Wagner's in Rheingold, the opening, the ground shaking earth
Yeah.
chords and the river churning.
Right.
You know, the plane landing in Nixon in China.
Oh yes.
These are
How
all
can we forget
absolutely, absolutely.
that? You haven't worked with the orchestra yet
No,
this
not yet.
time around. Couple of days.
Yeah,
or
on
the end of the
Wednesday.
week, on
Wednesday,
Wednesday. After having worked with the San Diego Symphony with Nixon in China, and then now coming back, what will that be like? I'm sure all of them will probably sigh a,
Yeah,
a sigh of relief.
There are a lot of notes for my friends to play in this. It is when we think of Debussy, when you think of Pellis and Melisande, or any of his orchestral works, La Mer. There's a lot of notes that my friends have to play in the pit. So my job is to make sure that they get whatever they need to succeed in playing these really beautiful florid passages.
But now you've established a relationship with
Yeah.
them now that you've played, you've conducted them
Yep.
3 times.
Yep.
What's it like to come back?
It's such a great group. I mean, I approach opera in a different way than I think some of my colleagues do. I think of it more as chamber music. Chamber music with my colleagues on the stage and chamber music with my colleagues in the pit.
Right.
I just have to help coordinate. So I really love making music with my friends.
That's fun, and we consider you a friend. It's just like Lise Lindstrom, who was
Yes,
just here for
Lise.
Turandot, or Joel Sorensen,
Yep,
or
yep.
you know, any of the folks that come back, like yourself. You know, when you return, because they're back. You know, he's back, she's back, and it's so much fun
great.
to have you here. So thank you so much for sharing.
pleasure.
It gave us a little bit more insight, a little light into the piece, and I just want to say to the audience, don't be afraid of this piece.
It's so beautiful.
It really is gorgeous. The vocal lines
So
too,
beautiful.
absolutely beautiful, and a
Yeah.
very interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. The vocal lines, everyone, again, thinks of it as being like Puccini, but Catan is a great writer for the
Catan is
voice.
Catan. Yeah.
He loves the voice, so
Yeah.
he celebrates the voice through these wonderful lines.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be
Wonderful.
great. Can't wait. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Okay.